It's Bearcat Blitz on the Believe Network. I'm your host, Russ Heltman of Cincinnati Bearcats on SI. He is my co-host across the way there, Neil Meyer from Rivals Cincinnati coverage site, the front office news.com. A few things to touch on as the news cycle starts to slow down around basketball and football, with both teams in a little bit of a hibernation mode right now. Big things picking up for the football team in a couple months, but we start with the basketball portal today, and we'll get to some of our top strength for the roster as it currently sits right now, and our top weakness for the roster. And then the back half of the show, we have Joe Royer popping up on the Ringers, Todd McShay's first round mock draft for 2026, all the way at the end of the first round. Joe Royer popped in there. And then we will get into the IPF, things happening around the IPF, final touches happening around the indoor performance facility, the Sheekley Indoor Performance Facility, and how much will it boost Cincinnati's pursuit of postseason success, or just a postseason berth at this point in the Scott Satterfield era. We'll discuss all that and more on this Bearcat Blitz coming up right here on the Believe Network. Neil, some basketball news and notes. We'll start with Tyler Betsy, headed to Syracuse to continue his college basketball career. And he was the final Bearcat in the portal to pick his college home, and staying a little closer to home, Neil, as he goes back to the East Coast where he is from, after averaging 3.3 points, 1.5 rebounds, and 11.2 minutes per game. Did leave the door open to return to Cincinnati, but as we discussed a couple weeks ago, less than 10%, less than 5% of these guys actually go back to their respective schools. And that percentage held true, as 0 Bearcats that entered the transfer portal will be returning to Wes Miller's roster in 2025-26.
Yeah, and it's worth noting too, Russ, it was a great thing that you brought up that he did keep the option open to return to Cincinnati, and he made that very clear via social media posts and whatnot. So overall, but this was a move for him to be closer to home. That was something that we have been kind of hearing rumblings of, where he wanted to get back closer to his family, might have been a little bit homesick, especially going from the Connecticut area down here to the Midwest. It's not an easy transition. And now here we are at the beginning of May, and Tyler Betsy announces he is going to the ACC and will play for Syracuse, where he'll join a completely new roster for the Orange up there, as they have done a great job in the transfer portal, and now gets the opportunity to play alongside Kyan Anthony as well, the son of Carmelo Anthony, New York Knicks legend. So overall, pretty big move for Tyler Betsy, and it's going to be interesting to see what kind of role he might have up there for Syracuse as well. I know everyone looks down the 6'7" forward, known for his shooting abilities, but it's going to be interesting to see what kind of role does he carve out for Syracuse this upcoming year, especially with the damage they have done in the transfer portal.
6'8", 225 is what Tyler Betsy sits at. Shot 32.1% from deep for the Bearcats last season, and was the 5th highest rated recruit of the 24/7 Sports era for Cincinnati. And he is no longer a Bearcat, leaving Tyler McKinley as the lone member still left at UC from the 2024 recruiting class proper. Neil, getting to some more news and notes here surrounding the transfer portal. Not a lot cooking from the Bearcats over the past week or so. Just 2 really notable contacts made really since the last few days of April to now. And we start with a report by CBS Sports' John Rothstein that UMass forward Daniel Rivera hearing from Cincinnati. 6'6", 215 pounds, 2 years of eligibility left for Rivera after he posted 11.9 points and 7.4 rebounds on 44% shooting from the field this past season. Not going to offer Cincinnati a lot of shooting prowess. Neil, is Rivera 22.7% from deep in his time with the UMass Minutemen, but a long player, another one of those long, rangy forwards that can flash between the 3, the 4, and maybe in some small ball lineups play that center position. And a similar forward kind of profile went out to interest in Sacred Heart forward Tanner Thomas, 6'6", 215 pounds, the exact same measurables as Daniel Rivera, 1 season of eligibility remaining, averaged 14.5 points, 6.5 rebounds this past season on 45.4% shooting, a much better deep shooter than Rivera, has a career 36.7% mark on 2.3 attempts per game across multiple seasons. Feels like, Neil, the final piece of the puzzle for the Bearcats and GM Corey Evans is going to be one of these wing, kind of more taller wing forwards that can give them even more lineup versatility.
Yeah, and it's a great thing that you mentioned that too, Russ, because you look down at two of the guys you mentioned. One of them actually just signed in the last 12 hours with Loyola Marymount, and that was Tanner Thomas. So the all MAAC selection, and Tanner Thomas now has found his new home. But like you mentioned, Russ, it looks to appear as Cincinnati's kind of got their selection of their core roster already built out. Now it's going to look like, as the next 1 or 2 additions, as things move forward, is going to be at that kind of guard wing position there. Now, could we see another similar situation like we saw with Halvin DeZellet, where he gets added to the roster in September? Who knows? But it appears that is the route that Cincinnati is taking heading into the 2025-2026 season under Wes Miller. And if you look at this roster, Russ, Cincinnati's done a great job, especially under Corey Evans, rebuilding this roster after a mass exodus a season ago.
Yeah, and Baba Miller, really, him and Daniel Rivera, the two real big kind of forwards still of note hanging out there that have had clear ties to Cincinnati in recent weeks. So we'll see how that plays out over the next week or so. Maybe get 1-2 more additions out of the transfer portal. But Neil, the reason I wanted to talk about this topic this week, is because it's largely done. The roster is largely put together for the Cincinnati Bearcats basketball team. We'll start with you. The biggest strength that you're seeing in terms of overall themes from this roster makeup, which has been completely overhauled over the past couple of weeks compared to a much lower, smaller overhaul in the 2024 transfer cycle.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me, Russ, right, when you look down and you see the guys that Cincinnati added in the transfer portal between the likes of Jalen Celestine, Sincere Harris, Jalen Haynes, Kirk Carissa, Mustafa Thiam, obviously everybody thinks attribute-wise that Cincinnati needed to make a move in the front court. But for me, what Cincinnati needed to add was somebody who could come in and play with some grit, play with some intensity, light a fire under somebody. And if you're looking at this roster down on paper right now as we sit in the first week of May, and you look down and you see the additions, Sincere Harris plays with great grit, great intensity, especially on the defensive end. Kirk Carissa, you know he's going to come in and be a trash talker. You know it's going to happen. He's going to play and get under people's skins. And that is an area that not only did Cincinnati lack last year, especially on the defensive side, they needed somebody to come in and light a fire. A season ago, they didn't have that. Now you look down at this roster, you might have 3 or 4 guys on this roster who could come in and kind of be that guy and disrupt teams on the defensive end. We saw it at times from Day Thomas last year, but you add that alongside of Kirk Carissa. Everybody's seen the clip of him trash talking Luka Doncic in the FIBA, which was a great video, a great insight. And then on top of it, you now have a big physical big man in Mustafa Thiam. Jalen Haynes is also a physical bruiser who will disrupt plays on the defensive end. And then you have Sincere Harris, who's one of the best defenders in the Big 12 a season ago, was a Big 12 defensive team selection. Overall, that's the biggest thing for me, right? Everyone's going to talk about, oh, we needed scoring. We needed a big man. You needed those kind of attributes along with having the ability to score. But for me, Russ, you look down on paper last year, Cincinnati could have had all the scoring in the world. But what they missed the most was somebody who would disrupt and kind of change the game in defensive, play with a little bit more grit than what we saw at times last season, and kind of have that, let's go out here and kind of make things hard, play aggressive on the defensive end. And I think they got a couple of those ball stoppers this year in the transfer portal.
Great minds think alike, Neil. The defensive floor that this entire rotation is going to bring to the table, I think is going to help Cincinnati win a lot of the games that they've consistently won under Wes Miller, those Q3, Q4 games. UC doesn't lose many of these out of nowhere upsets in the Wes Miller era, and it's because he has consistently put a defensive floor out in these games that can allow them to never get too down, never get really lost in the mix of a 20, 30, 40-point blowout or something like that. So I'm with you, Neil. The defensive acumen, I think, is the biggest strength of this roster. When you think about Sincere Harris and Mustafa Tiem, right there, that's all you need to know from the start. Mustafa Tiem and Sincere Harris, could Neil be the best front court, back court, 1-2 combination in the half court defensively in the entire Big 12 this season? That is very possible that they could plays out that way, given how strong of a defender Sincere Harris is and how strong a defender Mustafa Tiem is and how young both of them are. Guys still, I believe, both under 20 years old, still rising, still gaining attributes with their defensive acumen, gaining more and more defensive knowledge as they continue developing their basketball games. And Mustafa Tiem getting Coach Ndiaye coming over with him to this new Bearcat staff, I think it's just going to make his development even more streamlined and even more succinct and sharp on the defensive end. So I think those two guys, Jalen Celestine, you got that 6'7", 215-pound big body. I think he's going to bring a lot of solid defense to the table. Sean Abayev, I think, is going to be able to play pretty solid defense for a freshman. Same with Keyshawn Tillery. We know what Day Thomas brings to the table as an on-ball defender. I mean, Neil, you could be up 5-6 points with 2 minutes left, call the dogs in with Sincere Harris and Day Thomas at the front, at the backcourt positions right there, and not let anybody score in those final 2 minutes, really have any clear jump shot looks, I should say. Maybe some guys will be able to still pull off the amazing and hit some contested jumpers and stuff like that, but they're going to be able to put a defensive closing lineup out there that is going to hound teams consistently and give them a lot of big chances to win close ball games. So I'm with you on that. The defensive acumen that I'm seeing from this roster right now is going to be very, very strong, highlighted by Day Thomas, Mustafa Tiem, and Sincere Harris. Very interested to see how Harris mixes into this rotation. Is he a guy that can shoot the ball well enough to be one of the top 4, top 3 minute players on this roster? If he can shoot the ball at an adequate level, the defense is that good to require him to be out there that often. So very, very intrigued by that. We'll get to the weaknesses of the roster after these messages on Bearcat Blitz. Neil, my biggest weakness for this roster right now is playmaking and passing. And the big question mark to me is, can Kerr Kriisa stay healthy enough, keep his head on his shoulders tight enough in terms of not getting any crazy antics, any crazy foul outs, any crazy technical stuff like that? And can he be the straw that stirs this UC offensive drink? Because, Neil, without Kerr Kriisa being an impact player and being a consistent 25 to 32 minute per game player, leading the team in assists, being one of those top assist rate players in the Big 12, like he has been in a high major level multiple times in his career, it's going to get really bogged down once again, I think, in the offensive portions of the game, especially in the half court, if Kerr Kriisa is not that magician with the basketball, finding his teammates consistently.
Yeah, and I think, too, it's worth noting, too, you mentioned the playmaking ability. I truly think, Russ, too, now that Cincinnati has Tyler McKinley back healthy, that could be a big-time game changer in order for Cincinnati to knock down some of those open shots. The passing ability, he has incredible passing ability for a 7-footer, and he can really kind of step out and knock down those 3-point shots, which is something Cincinnati desperately needed in recent seasons. So, I mean, I think having him back fully healthy now that he's anticipating a full off season, fully healthy, especially after the injury in September, if he can stay fully healthy, I think he'll be a contributor for Cincinnati in both of those aspects. But for me, I think the big
that's a wild card unknown that could completely juice up the assistability of this roster for sure. Great point, Neil.
And I think the biggest thing for me, the weakness is I'm still kind of looking at the depth behind Mustafa Tiem, right? You look down, you see Jalen Haynes, you see Tyler McKinley, Halvine DeZellet. Nobody really kind of knows what is still yet to come for Halvine DeZellet. He saw a little bit of time last season, especially towards the end during the crown run. But like we mentioned, Tyler McKinley is still kind of an unknown for what his role might be for Wes Miller and how they envision him in this offense, especially with a whole new roster of what is anticipating to be 10 different faces from a season ago. How does Jalen Haynes fit into what Wes Miller is trying to do with Mustafa Tiem? How do we see those two play together? It's going to be interesting, especially now that you have two bigs in Jalen Haynes and Mustafa Tiem who have an offensive bag, which is something Cincinnati has not had in probably 5-6 years, Russ, if we had to picture it right, where they've had maybe
Trey
even
Scott,
longer.
probably the last time
Trey
the
Scott
big
was
had a
probably the
real
last
offensive
guy
game.
where they had an offensive bag for
Victor Locken to an extent, but not at a high major level.
Yeah, and that's what I'm kind of getting to, because you look down, Mustafa Tiem can do a lot of different things. He's 29% from three. He has an inside game. Jalen Haynes is your big-time bruiser, so it's going to be interesting to see how does those two really kind of gel together in the front court.
I like that. It's the depth is still a little bit of a mystery, but I think it's a mystery that they're relying on Tyler McKinley to solve. This is a Tyler McKinley year. T-Mac, this is why we brought you in, to be that kind of connector between the veterans in the front court and the bench of the front court, and he's going to have to be that for Cincinnati Bearcats basketball this year. A lot of exciting times ahead, hopefully, for Tyler McKinley in his Bearcats tenure. Let's get to a possible exciting time next April for Joe Royer, as Neil, the Ringer, Todd McShay has included Royer as the 32nd pick in his way too early 2026 NFL mock draft. He went to let's see here. Was it the Eagles? I think it was, or the Chiefs, something like that. They do the picks based off of betting win totals. It doesn't really matter who he goes to. It's going to be a completely different team later on when the actual draft is set. But the big news, though, Neil, is Joe Royer, projected by a highly respected draft analyst to be one of the top two tight ends in the class as of right now, and a first-round pick. And I think I would agree with Todd McShay wholeheartedly. Joe Royer has top 60 pick talent as we sit here today. And if he blocks like he has worked on his blocking to be able to do this coming season, then he very well could be a top 32 overall pick and a guy that is one of the top tight ends in the 26 class.
Yeah, and it's worth noting too, Russ. I mean, there's reasons he came back for Cincinnati, and there's stipulation of, you don't want to go to the NFL draft if you only have 1 year of tape on you. Joe Royer could have simply gone to the NFL draft this season, Russ, and he probably would have been a 3rd to 4th round draft pick. Everybody knows that. But instead, from what he was hearing from NFL teams and whatnot, it was best for him to make the business decision to come back and maybe put up another year of good tape as long as he stays healthy, improves on some of the things. And it's starting to show right now, Russ, by especially a big-time analyst and mock NFL coverage analyst in Todd McShay, who has him as the 32nd best prospect in his way too early draft. And Russ, it's safe to say he'll be a top 60 draft pick. I know we've talked to him a couple times. We've seen him throughout the spring. We've talked to him off the record a little bit as well, but there's a great possibility that he will be the next tight end out of Cincinnati, longtime greats behind the guys of Travis Kelce, Brent Selleck, Josiah DeGuaro, Bruno Labelle, who's also in the NFL. There's a lot of history for Cincinnati tight ends. And if Joe Royer does what people are expecting him to do this season, there's a good chance he will be a first-round draft pick or even a second-round draft pick, early second-round draft pick this year. And I hope that is the case, Russ, and I hope we're talking about this a year later where we're talking about Joe Royer being a first-round draft pick. And if that does happen to be the case, I don't want to hear Ohio State fans say, we claim Joe Royer. No, that's not how this works. He started his career there, yes, but he really shined at Cincinnati and paved his way here at Cincinnati. So overall, if that is the case, and we are talking about that, I'm just putting it out there in the air right now, that Ohio State fans, you cannot claim him for being one of your next star NFL players because of the things he did at Cincinnati. I know they like to get that idea, so we're just throwing it out there in the air now.
Love it. Yeah, this is just another example of how great the transfer portal is for college athletics. It's just another perfect example of it. Yes, there are major issues, major things that need to be tied up and tied together in terms of probably need contracts for these players, probably need a little bit less of a Wild West mentality. But you have a guy in Joe Royer who went through all the things he went through in his life, losing his mom, all the family tragedy, just all of the stuff that was weighing on him at Ohio State, gets to come home, play in front of his family, completely reshape his entire life trajectory. I mean, compared to what he was going to do this time 18 months ago to what he's looking at doing 18 months later, and having the opportunity to turn down the NFL draft to be able to go and possibly secure yourself more money in the next calendar year via NIL than you would have made in the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round as a draft pick there in terms of guaranteed money on those smaller later round NFL rookie deals. It's just really cool. Joe's always seemed like a really good guy. He's always been great to you and I, Neil, and just really happy for Joe that people are starting to take notice, and a guy like Todd McShay has him on his radar.
Yeah, it's also cool too for me, Russ, because not many people actually know this, but I actually grew up with Joe. So I remember going to
that's right. Yeah.
Summer camp with him way back in the day when he was 4 foot tall, back when we were 6 and 7 years old, running around a CRC camp over here on the west side of Cincinnati. So I know his family really well. And I mean, Russ, you're not going to find many better human beings than Joe Royer. But on top of it, somebody who has the natural and athletic abilities that he does. I mean, 6'5", he's 255 pounds. Russ, I saw him the other day working out at the school I coach at over here on the west side, and he came in and got a quick lift, which wasn't expecting to see him there. And I mean, he is not your average NFL tight end or college tight end build. He is a massive, massive, big time body tight end, where if you look at him compared to some of the other tight ends, you're going to be like, okay, is he really a tight end or whatnot? Like, you're going to question because of his athletic abilities and his build. Like, he is a massive, he could probably go start for many NFL teams right now. So on top of it, not only that, but you picture him next to, there was a picture I think that surfaced recently of Max Clare next to future Ohio State Buckeye Chris Henry. Chris Henry Jr. is like 6'7". Max Clare's 6'4", 240. So think about putting him next to Joe Royer. Max Clare is the projected first tight end off the board next year. He's 6'4", 240. Put him next to Joe Royer, and you're going to see a difference in the stature of their bodies and whatnot, especially when Joe Royer has almost 20 pounds on him. So there's a lot of similarities and things to kind of take when you're talking about this tight end class. But overall, it's just crazy to think about where we were a few years ago, Russ, where Joe goes off to Ohio State. I'm following him from being friends with him growing up to seeing him go to Ohio State. And it's like, okay, well, he's going to do big things there. And then now he's back here and you're seeing his name on a first round projected draft board. I know I was talking with some family members the other day. I was like, man, isn't that crazy? Like, we used to all go to camp together and we were this big. And next thing you know, he's now paving his way to be a potential NFL star in the next year. So it's crazy. It's crazy how life comes at you.
The IPF, Neil, almost complete. The indoor practice facility will be unveiled, ribbon cutting, in about exactly 35 days from when we are recording this right now. I think it's going to be a catalyst. I do. Looking at the schedule, it's another schedule for Cincinnati Bearcats football where they're going to be in a lot of tight games. They're going to be in the opportunity, in the arena, with a chance to punch that 6th win, I think, a few times throughout this schedule. And just like they had a few times to punch that ticket last year and came up short, Neil, I think the recovery aspects of the IPF will be able to send Cincinnati over the finish line this time around. I think that's going to make the slightest bit of difference to be able to help a kicker like Steven Rusnak feel his best, have his leg feeling its absolute best going into a game, and him hitting a kick that maybe he wouldn't have hit to win a game had they not had the IPF and the recoverability training aspects of that facility. Maybe you have a player shedding a block a little faster because his lower body is a little bit in better shape in week 12, week 11, week 10 than it would have been compared to the same time last year without the IPF and the red light therapy and the nutrition center and the hot tubs and the cold tubs and the sauna and the steam room. All of this stuff, Neil, I think will be enough to send Cincinnati from 5 to 6 wins in the end. Will they get to 7, 8, 9? I'm not so sure about that. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it with our full season projections in just a few months. But I think this is they're investing $130+ million into this operation for a reason. It's going to help with recruiting, but first and foremost, it's going to help this 2025 roster, in my opinion, hit its highest ceiling possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, Russ, you talk about it, right? The saunas, the new recovery stations, the nutrition station, all that $134 million worth of projects that are getting poured into the Shakely practice facility up there in Clifton. Think about it. Cincinnati has not had an indoor practice, Russ, in 2 years. Think about what it's going to be like this upcoming season where they are able to have an indoor practice on a day where it is raining or a day where it is 20 degrees outside, 30 degrees, whatever it might be. That is something Scott Satterfield has not been able to have once here during his tenure at Cincinnati, actually on campus. Yes, they've gone down to the IPF for the Cincinnati Bengals a couple times and been able to use their facilities due to some kind of partnership or deal they have worked out with the city of Cincinnati there. But on top of it, Russ, this is massive for Cincinnati. This is going to be one of the state-of-the-art facilities in all of college football, all of college athletics. And to see $134 million poured into it, especially when that ribbon cutting day is just about 35 days away, like you mentioned, it is going to be fantastic. I'm sure we're going to get an up-close look and a walkthrough before they open it. And I couldn't be more excited for when that time comes because, Russ, this has been a big time, a 2-year project in the works. And you're hearing how excited these guys are, these coaches are. We've seen the hard hat Wednesdays that they are putting out. And honestly, you couldn't be more excited. Like now that the time's here, you look down and you see May 6, 2025. The estimated completion date was May 30th. So on top of it, knowing that you're only 2 weeks away, roughly 3 weeks away, you got to be pretty fired up to see what might be able to come out of it here in late May at the new practice facility.
And who's the construction company? I forget who's doing the construction. Is it Messer Construction? Is that who's doing it?
I think Messer is, if I remember correctly.
I'm not exactly sure, but maybe you could look that up while I'm talking here, Neil, so we can get that right. But the speed that they've been able to do it is really impressive. Just a project of this size in campus, in the middle of campus, like right next to a super busy road. It's just been really impressive on that front. And just they did it basically in scheduled time. It was scheduled to open end of May 2025, and they're doing the ribbon cutting ceremony 10 days later, the start of June. Actually, I saw my birthday, June 11th, 2025, as was it Messer Construction, Neil? Is that who it was?
Yeah, I'm looking at the notes I took from the tour that we took. So yeah, it is Messer Construction.
Cool.
And it's also worth noting too that this is a fun bit. If you remember the size of the lockers, Russ, too, when they did that tour, the storage unit in the lockers are big enough to hold 6 pairs of size 18 cleats for Dante Corleone.
Yeah, that's right. They sent his cleats down to the locker makers in Texas to make sure that everybody's cleats
had enough room to fit in. So think about that. On top of it, you have a car wash to remove pellets and pieces of turf before you're getting into the hydrotherapy room. You have a 120-yard field. You have a Gatorade Nutrition Center. That's all going to be sponsored by Gatorade, and signage will be brought in by them. 2 float beds, 1 red light therapy bed just for football, a sound therapy system. They'll have a team meeting room of 135 seats, 8 cameras in the indoor, 2 on the outdoor for film purposes. This is a big time upgrade for Cincinnati athletics, and it's going to be used by all sports teams too. So not only just football. So
it's all that space that football's taking up right now in Lindner
will be free
to all the other sports. So it's just going to help the other sports be able to achieve their goals even more so. And I'm sure head trainer Aaron Himmler is going to be making sure that red light therapy, making sure those cold tubs, making sure those saunas are as full and operating as much as possible for these players as they try to stay as healthy and on the field as much as possible. For Neil Meyer, I'm Russ Eltman. Fun Bearcat Blitz to start this week in the month of May. We'll be back with you later on this week on Bearcat Blitz. Enjoy, everybody.
This is the second. 15 seconds left. Shot clock off. 4-point game. DeJulius puts up a three.